All right, so we're going deep today on something that just dropped, like literally just a few days ago.
Yeah, March 27th, 2025.
President Trump signed an executive order,
Yeah.
a pretty significant one.
Big one, yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to collective bargaining rights for federal employees.
And it's not just like, a handful of people.
Right.
This is targeting some pretty major agencies.
Yeah, we're talking about like defense, Veterans Affairs, Health and Human Services, and the Justice Department.
Yeah.
So these aren't small little departments at all.
Nope, these are the big ones.
Right. And the number of workers who could be affected is,
Oh, it's pretty substantial.
yeah, it's huge.
Union estimates are saying over 1 million federal employees.
Yeah, that's a lot of people.
It's a big chunk of the civil service.
Right. And it really kind of throws a wrench into how these agencies operate with their employees.
It's a big shift, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, why is this happening? What's the reasoning behind this?
Well, if you look at the fact sheet that the White House put out,
That's right.
they're saying it's all about having a more,
Right.
responsive and accountable civil service.
Mm-hmm. Responsive and accountable.
Yeah, and they basically argue that the existing union agreements are
Cool.
kind of getting in the way
Yeah.
of the president being able to actually get things done.
Okay. So it sounds like, from their perspective, these collective bargaining agreements are almost seen as like
Roadblocks.
roadblocks, yeah, to efficient management.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that the unions see this very differently.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the reaction from the big labor organizations like the AFL-CIO and the American Federation of Government Employees, the AFGE,
Yeah.
it was pretty swift, pretty strong.
I bet.
They're calling it like straight up union busting
Yeah.
and retaliatory. So they're seeing this as a direct attack on organized labor.
Definitely, yeah.
And this isn't just them like complaining.
Right.
They're actually, as of just yesterday, March 29th, they both, the AFL-CIO and the AFGE,
Yeah.
they said they're going to go to court.
They're going to fight it.
Yeah, so we could be looking at like a pretty big legal battle over this.
Oh, absolutely. This could drag on for a while.
Yeah, for sure. But I think what really caught my attention going through all this material
Yeah.
was there's this one person.
Interesting.
They were a member of a hospitality union,
Okay.
and they're retired now. But they had a really interesting perspective on all of this.
Stay curious to hear that.
Yeah, and it kind of goes beyond just these federal employees.
Okay.
We're talking about over 1 million people directly affected by this.
Right.
But this person was concerned about
Yeah.
this could be like a precedent.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that it could have a ripple effect on all unions.
Yeah. So like the first domino falling.
Yeah, exactly. Like it starts here, and then who knows where it could go.
So before we get into those potential ripple effects, can we
Yeah.
like back up for a second, just make sure we understand what this order actually does?
Yeah, for sure. So basically,
Yeah.
it directs these agencies to basically stop
Okay.
recognizing the existing union agreements.
So no more union agreements.
No more. And it says to stop any negotiations on new ones.
Oh, wow.
So it's like
Yeah.
a hard stop.
A hard stop. Yeah. That's
Right.
pretty drastic.
Yeah, it is. And they're not just doing this out of like thin air.
Right.
They're citing a specific part of the law.
Okay. Which part?
It's a national security provision
Okay.
from the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978.
The Civil Service Reform Act. Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of the big umbrella law that deals with how federal civilian employees are
Okay.
employed. And the Washington Post, they were reporting on this, and they were like
Yeah.
highlighting that national security framing as like the real legal basis for this.
That's interesting. So they're essentially saying that collective bargaining in these agencies could like
Yeah.
somehow harm national
Well,
security.
Right, which is
That's a pretty big claim.
it is a big claim. Yeah.
Okay, but let's shift gears a bit.
Yep.
Let's talk about those ripple effects that retired union member brought up.
Okay, so first big one is this whole idea of precedent,
Yeah.
right? So if the federal government, and this is like the biggest employer in the country,
It is, yeah.
if they're going after federal unions like this, the worry is that lawmakers at the state level, even at the federal level,
Yeah.
might be more likely to like go after private sector unions.
Oh, I see. So it's like it emboldens them
Yeah, basically.
to take similar actions.
Yeah. And they're saying this is especially a worry in states that don't have what are called right to work laws.
Right to work. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about places like New York and California,
Okay.
where unions tend to be
Stronger.
stronger.
Right. Right. Because if the federal government does this, it kind of sends a message
Yeah.
that it's okay to weaken unions,
Totally. Yeah.
and that could influence, what happens in those states.
Right. Right. And then there's this whole other thing about right to work laws.
Right. Right to work.
Now, some people might not be super familiar with these.
Yeah, it can be a little confusing.
Yeah. So basically, these laws, there are 26 states that have them already.
Okay.
And what they do is they let workers in unionized workplaces benefit from, like the union's contract,
Okay.
but they don't have to pay dues.
So they get the benefits.
They get the benefits.
But they don't have to chip in.
Right. And that puts unions in a really tough spot.
I bet. Yeah.
Because they're legally required to represent all the workers,
Right.
even the ones who aren't paying.
Oh, wow. So it's like
Yeah.
they're kind of stuck.
Yeah, they're kind of stuck. And the worry is that
Yeah.
this whole like anti-union feeling behind this executive order could push more states
To adopt to work.
right to work. Exactly.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and this retired union member, they said it could
Wow.
starve unions of revenue.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, because if you have a bunch of people
Right.
who aren't paying dues,
But are still getting the benefits.
but they're still getting,
the higher wages, the better benefits.
the better benefits. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it really hard for the union to function.
Right. It's like undermining their ability to actually do their job.
Exactly. Yeah, and then on top of that,
Yeah.
you got to think about the impact on like worker morale.
Morale.
Right. And just the whole effort to organize new workplaces.
Because if the federal government can do this,
Yeah.
what's to stop other employers from trying the same thing?
Exactly. And it makes you feel like, what's the point?
Yeah.
If even federal workers.
You usually have pretty strong protections.
Right, they do.
If they can lose their bargaining rights, then what hope do we have?
That's the feeling, yeah.
Especially in those tougher industries.
Yeah.
Like hospitality,
Right, the one that this retired member came from.
Exactly, where it's already hard enough to organize.
It is, yeah. So it could lead to, like, fewer people willing to join unions or pay dues, and that would make it even harder to organize.
It's a vicious cycle.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole other layer
Uh-huh.
of how the labor movement is all connected.
Connect to how so?
So you have these federal labor unions,
Right.
and they give money to these bigger organizations like the AFL-CIO.
The AFL-CIO, yeah.
And those federations, they're the ones who like support organizing efforts. They help with legal challenges.
Okay.
They do political advocacy.
So it's like it's all interconnected.
It is, yeah. And the concern is that if these federal unions are weakened,
By this executive order,
right,
then the whole labor movement suffers.
exactly, because they have less money to give,
Less money, less support.
less support, yeah. And that affects workers everywhere,
Not just in the federal government.
right? Public and private sector.
Wow, it's like a domino effect,
It is, yeah. And it's really important to remember, like, that personal story.
Yeah, about the sweatshops.
Yeah, because it shows, like, what can be lost.
Right, it's not just abstract.
No.
It's real people's lives.
It is. And this person talked about working 12-hour shifts.
12-hour shifts.
No breaks.
No breaks. That's brutal.
It is. And they were constantly worried about getting fired
For anything.
for anything, yeah.
That's a lot of pressure.
It is. And then they joined a union.
And things got better.
Yeah. They said it was like night and day.
That's great.
They started getting fair hours.
Okay.
They got breaks.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah. And they had protection from just being randomly fired.
So the union really made a difference for them.
Yeah, it did. And they said that the dues were like the lifeline of the union.
Uh-huh. Because that's what keeps it running.
Yeah, it is. And it kept things from going back
To those sweatshop conditions?
to those bad conditions. Yeah,
Wow, that's powerful.
it is. And so for this person,
Yeah.
this executive order,
It's not just some policy, it's personal.
it's personal. Yeah, they see it as a threat.
A threat to the system that helped them,
Exactly.
that gave them a better life.
And it's important to remember,
Yeah.
like, there are different sides to this story.
Of course, right?
So, like, the White House, they're saying they're doing this for
For efficiency,
efficiency. Yeah, they want the government to be
more accountable.
more accountable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they think this is the way to do it.
Okay, but the unions are saying,
They're saying, no way.
no way. Yeah.
The AFL-CIO, they have this whole call to action. You can find it on their website.
Their mobilization page, yeah.
Yeah, and they're basically saying,
You got to fight this.
yeah, we got to fight this. They're telling their members to like
To get involved.
get involved, yeah.
Like resist this.
Right. And then the AFGE,
The one that represents a lot of these federal workers.
yeah, they're saying this is straight up retaliation.
Retaliation, yeah.
Yeah. And they're going to court
To try to stop it.
to try to stop it. Yeah, and even like the news coverage,
Yeah.
you know, you look at NPR, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post,
The big names.
they're all saying this is
This is a big deal.
a big deal. Yeah.
It's huge, yeah.
Yeah, and everyone's kind of split on it.
Divided.
Divided. Yeah. So to recap, we've got this executive order
Yeah. Okay.
that's targeting the bargaining rights of over 1 million federal workers.
Over 1 million.
Yeah, and the administration is saying
It's for efficiency,
efficiency. Yeah.
national security.
National security, right? And they're using that law.
That 1978 law.
Yeah, to justify it.
But the unions are saying this is a direct attack,
Yeah, they're not having it.
and they're ready to fight back.
Yeah, they're going to court.
It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
It is. And beyond just this immediate fight,
Yeah.
there are these bigger worries.
About what this could mean for all unions.
Yeah, like, could this happen in the private sector?
Could this lead to more right-to-work laws?
Right. And what about worker morale?
Will people even want to join unions anymore?
It's a big question.
It is. And that story about the sweatshops,
Yeah.
it really shows what's at stake here
It does. It shows how important these rights are.
for everyday workers.
Yeah, for everyone.
So this whole situation really makes you think,
It does.
about like the balance of power
Mm-hmm.
between employers and employees.
Right.
The government is the employer here,
Right.
but it's also responsible for protecting workers' rights.
Yeah. It's a tricky situation.
It is. So for you listening out there,
Yeah.
what do you think are the biggest takeaways from this?
Yeah. What are the long-term consequences?
Not just for federal employees,
Right. But for everyone.
to the whole country.
Yeah. Because this could change things in a big way.
It could. So what questions does this raise for you?
Yeah. About the future of labor. About how we protect workers' rights.
It's something we all need to think about.
We do. It's a conversation that needs to happen.
Absolutely.
We're glad you're joining us for it.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.